Greetings comic lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, reviews of comics new and old, to history to anecdotes, really wherever our whims take us. I've fallen down a hole, a clay hole. It all started with some of you making jokes that the artist Clayman could be an alias for Clayface. Then I started thinking about Clayface and how there are so many and then the variations. The hook was in me and I knew there was no escape. The tale of Clayface is long and features many players. It dances in and out of reboots and it's fascinating. And in my opinion, worth looking at. It's also going to take us on some interesting side trips. Our first stop is the Golden Age. We've got to go back to the very beginning for our first Clayface, Basil Karlo, who would find himself created, shelved, brought back decades later, and eventually becoming the main Clayface once more. But for now, we're going to focus on the Golden Age. Let's get to it. But before we get started, I'm Sasha, and if you're enjoying this content, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit subscribe button to join us on this comic book journey. Batman is unique, not only in that he is one of the heroes who launches the age of heroes within comics, but also because so many from his rogues gallery can be traced back to this Golden Age alongside him. Clayface doesn't take off in this period like say the Joker, but he was first introduced here as Basil Karlo, an aging, washed up, their words not mine, actor. His name is a play on two of the popular actors from the era. We have famed horror actor Boris Karloff and Sherlock Holmes lead Basil Rathbone. Basil Karlo first debuted in Detective Comics 40 in 1940 and was created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane. All in all, for the entirety of the Golden Age, he would appear twice. The second in issue 49 in 1941, so he didn't exactly set the world on fire. And our second Clayface, Matt Hagen, wouldn't debut until well into the Silver Age in 1961. So who was Clayface? And how are his stories? Why was he used so little when his actual persona and characterization would be one that would ultimately bleed into the DCAU, that's the DC Animated Universe portrayal, and come to be arguably the most recognizable backstory, updated and solidifying him as the Clayface decades later? Well, let's find out. Also, I said the Clayface. Been hanging out in DC way too long. The everything. The Clayface tale is the first in issue 40, which I must say does not have the most loving digital update. Either there wasn't much care put into remastering this one, or the versions they had to work with were rough, because these scans are lacking in colors, background detail, and overly bright. I did what I could to make it a bit better, but not all of the comics are the best preserved. Our cover features Batman grappling with Clayface on a rooftop while Robin dangles perilously. Yes, that's Clayface. Inside, Bruce is excited because he has a date to go visit a movie set with his fiance Julie Madison. His fiance. Yes, Bruce Wayne had a fiance, and she's acting in a horror picture at the Argus Motion Picture Company. She's currently an understudy to the lead and an extra, but Bruce isn't gonna pass up a trip to a movie studio. So we go there and we go around and meet the players, for this Clayface story is a murder mystery. The film's star is Kenneth Todd, and they're making a movie called Dread Castle, which is a remake of a classic horror film wherein the lead was played by Basil Karlo, who is described as a character actor and makeup artist. And there he is! He says he's popped in to meet his successor and wish him luck. He tells him not to be foolish, as we learned that some shenanigans occurred that tarnished Karlo's reputation. He had some of that bad publicity that people like to claim doesn't exist. They never say what the scandals were though, so I just have to fill them in on my own. Leaked DMs. Basil Karlo wants to eat beating human heart. With him gone, we introduce our red herrings, or other characters. There's the director, who's been taken off the film because he just disappears, sometimes for days on end, but he's outraged to be fired nonetheless. We have the boyfriend's the lead actress of the film, who she's dumping because he's a washed up has-been. He threatens to kill her in front of the whole set. Later. Well, Mr. Bentley, it's been very enjoyable, but it's growing late. Bruce Wayne is a quasi sort of very bad Adam West impression, even though it's the 40s. Why? Because I just had a cold and my throat hurts. Also, what an enjoyable visit. Met a B-movie actor, saw two people receive death threats on set. Good day. Bruce lives for the tea. After he leaves, we see the studio head get threatened by a gangster. Off you gangster, off the lot! That's courage. Shooing a mafia boss off the set like a stray cat. Nerves of steel. Dread Castle is a production worth dying for. Something's going to happen out at that studio. There seems to be an aura of hate pervading the very atmosphere of the place. I had a great time. Truly enjoyable. Bruce Wayne, 1940. Bruce goes back to the set to visit Julie a few days into the shoot, just in time for the big murder scene. But from the darkened corner of the set, a hideous face watches with baleful eyes. It's Clayface, lurking and monologuing in the shadows. As the lights go down, the star of the picture, Lorna Dane, gets murdered. For realsies, the scene is finished, for death is the director. Production is halted for a week, but the police can't figure anything out, so the show must go on, now with Julie as the lead. She tells Bruce she's a little afraid, but he says it's fine, the murderer just wanted to kill Lorna. Enjoy acting in the literal shoes of a dead woman. Dick stands by and looks jealous. However, Bruce is also worried and decides that they should check it out, but it's Batman and Robin. It says no admittance, but that doesn't mean us, Robin. We're above the law. They break up a shakedown happening led by the gangster the studio head Bentley insulted earlier, but he swears he didn't kill Lorna, he was just willing to let people think he did for street cred, and so the production would pay their protection money. So on to red herring number 2, Angry X. But when Batman gets to his place, he's been murdered and hung up on a coat hook? On a hanger? Dang. But he's got enough energy for an ominous dying breath clue. Clayface, he's Robin was left to guard the set when he sees lights on in the Dread Castle and decides to investigate. Gosh, what a spot for a murder! Holy homicide, Batman! But at the top of the stairs lurks Clayface, and not gonna lie, he's actually kind of menacing in this panel. They said they were going for a Lon Chaney Phantom of the Opera type vibe. I think they got it. He also looks reminiscent of the villain on the poster of The Terror from 1938, so well played. Poor Robin, being a child, is bested by Clayface and thrown into the actual moat below. Thankfully, Batman just got back and saves him. The next day, Clayface lurks in wait for Julie. The terror! Die! This movie looks great. Clayface also screams, "Die, Julie," as he throws a knife at her, totally giving away his position. But Golden Age Batman is here to halt the knife and deliver quips. May I cut in? The director knows what's up. Focus the cameras. The shots will be knockouts. So it's battle time and Robin gets in some vengeance hits. Clayface, from now on, your name is Mud. I'm ashamed to confess that when I first read that, I laughed out loud. And so it is revealed that Clayface is Basil Karlo, and he would have gotten away with it if it weren't for those meddling vigilantes. Clayface was the name of a movie he starred in, and he's wearing the makeup and costume from that. He snapped because the fact that one of his iconic movies is being remade means that he is being replaced. It's truly over. People aren't gonna remember him. This is his one thing and he can't bear to have it taken away from him. Okay, but what were the scandals though? Batman claims that his mind had been twisted by playing so many horror characters that they had taken possession of his mind and soul. He got too method. He was killing off the characters in the order that they died in the original movie. The boyfriend of the lead got killed because he recognized the Clayface disguise and was trying to blackmail him. The studio offers Batman and Robin a role in the movies, but they say no, they have too much crime to fight. The end. So this story does feel very much like a one and done, due to the fact that Karlo's focus is so specific. The themes of ego, fame, disassociation, vanity, and more are only kernels at this point, not seemingly fully recognized for the potential that they hold. And they will gain poignancy as the culture surrounding celebrity and fame changes over time. For what this is, it's solid, a little proto-noir-esque murder mystery with a fairly unique motivation for the time. However, Clayface doesn't have a very iconic look. This on top of his highly personal motive, so he doesn't quite stand out like other Batman villains. And these comics have like 4 or 5 stories in them. We're talking about Detective Comics, and then we also have Batman having his own comics, so you really gotta stand out because there's a lot of Batman being pumped out. Kinda like the time of this recording. Issue 49, which is a much better digital update by the way, when he reappears, continues this style of story. In that one he wants to take down and ruin the studio for firing him and stopping his career, which puts him once more on a collision course with Julie, who is now a rising star thanks to her stellar performance in Dread Castle as Woman Who Died. She's got a new name, Portia Storm, with an E at the end. And she teams up with Batman and Robin to catch Clayface. Her and Bruce also break up this issue. She calls off the engagement. This is because she finds Bruce to be a wastrel, a dilettante, and she wants him to get a job. It's super amiable though. She tells him if he ever, does something, she'll be more than happy to get back together with him. And he says he'll always be there if she needs him. Tom King Batman, pining and crying because Selena is the only woman he could possibly marry and achieve happiness with ever. Julie Madison has entered the chat. You know what? So is Julia Pennyworth. She's in the chat too. And so is Silver St. Cloud. And even as awful as she treated him, so is Vicky Vale. Did you know that Julie actually reappeared not only years later when she would marry royalty, but post-Flashpoint in the New 52, and she was the head of a program for underprivileged youth that Bruce founded? Because despite the late 2010s and early 2020s deciding his money was suddenly a problem but not demonstrating it narratively, instead just wanting you to take their word for it, Bruce has been donating to charity and creating his own programs and seeking out people he knows are on a criminal path in life for jobs and counseling for years. That's right, creating his own programs, so he knows where the money is going. Barbara from Batgirl issue 50. I'm sorry, I went someplace. Cracked like Basil Karlo's Clayface mask. The Clayface that comes later after this one, the second Clayface, is very different from this one, but was still partially inspired by him. But Karlo pre-Powers and incidentally pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths 1985 were not really much with change for him, was seen a few more times. Once at the tail end of the Silver Age, but in a comic that was recalling the most important woman in Batman and Bruce's life, so that was about Julie. We can't talk about Julie without Clayface. I mean, you can, but do you want to? Yeah, sometimes. The next was Detective Comics 496 in the Bronze Age, where he was framed, set up by an actor to both trigger him by hosting a horror-themed event and not inviting him, so that he could frame him, in a story that took the time to take shots at modern-day makeup effects. After that, we're post-Crisis, and Basil will have become a bit more fleshed out. But again, not much changes, but that's for a later video. I tell you, there's much Clayface. I live here now. This isn't a bad idea at its inception, but it's a fairly narrow one that will eventually find its way. The concept of him being able to look like anyone is a huge step forward for the character. But it does have its roots here as well, in him being a skilled makeup artist. Even Clayface's monstrous appearance is a play on Karlo as a horror movie actor. All the Clayfaces are intriguingly linked. I'm very excited to get stuck in. I'll see myself out. I always like going back to the Golden Age tales. There are some gems and some rough patches, and mostly stories that laid foundations. It's a fascinating time, oft bypassed for the more eccentric and for many recognizable Silver Age. These two Clayface outings were alright, but I can see why he wasn't pulled out of the villain crayon box for a while. Not with some of the other players you had running around. I feel like I had big tooth this video because I got big hair. Give me a head full of hair. Long, beautiful hair. What did you think of this story? Was this a cool motivation for a villain? Do you want to see Dreadcastle? Did you know about Julie Madison? Do you too sometimes go places? Let me know all that and more down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking time of your day to spend it discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.